Welcome pupils to part 2 of stages in writing a composition. In our last lesson, we covered the first 2 steps, which were choosing the topic or scenario and brainstorming ideas. Remember that when you are choosing a topic, it is important and very wise to do so with one that has some sort of interest to you. You choose one that you are interested in so that you can make connection and you can come up with relevant ideas. When brainstorming, some of the key questions to keep in mind so as to help you stimulate your ideas a little more are based on who, what, when, where, why, and how. Who were the persons involved in the situation, in the experience, in the event? What are some of the things that happened during this event or experience? When did this event take place, or when did you go through this experience? Where did this activity occur? Why did you go on the trip, or why were you participating in the activity? And how did you feel during the experience or event? Now we will continue as we move on to step 3. Step 3, organizing. What is organizing? Organizing is the act of arranging in a particular order. Now in composition writing, ideas must be arranged in a sequential way so that there is a smooth flow of ideas and easy for the reader to follow. In organizing, the parts of a composition must be kept in mind so that ideas can be arranged appropriately. What ideas will be placed in the introduction? What ideas will be used to develop the middle of the composition? The order in which the ideas will be placed in the middle is also very important. Then what do we talk about in the conclusion of our composition? So here we have the 3 parts to keep in mind as we go through organizing of our ideas when writing a composition. The introduction, the middle, and the conclusion. Now, organizing also helps us to ensure that the composition is written in paragraphs. When organizing, a number of things can be done. As I said before, you can use what is called a graphic organizer or even a table to help you list or arrange your ideas so that you have them in each section of your composition. In our previous lesson, if you remember, I did show some examples of what idea webs or graphic organizers you can use. Here you will see I have a table. The table is divided into introduction, the middle or main body, and then we have the conclusion. Now, what ideas do we organize, or what ideas do we put in the introduction? What ideas do we put in the middle or the main body? And what do we put in the conclusion? Now, for the introduction, what you want to do is to give a short preview of the topic. So our topic is my first trip by boat. We are traveling by boat, or we are going on a journey by boat. In the introduction, you want to talk a little about traveling. It is also important to note that your introduction should not be very long. about 3 sentences is quite enough. Now, for the middle or the main body of your composition, you will see on the table that I have it separated in paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3. Now, there is nothing saying that you must have 3 paragraphs in the middle. You can have 2, 1, or 2. It depends on the events or the series of things that happen. Now, what you also want to remember that the middle or the main body is the highlight of your composition. This is where you talk about your actual experience in detail. So, you would want to include the things that you would have come up with when you answered some of the questions we looked at before. When was the event, or when did you have the experience? Who were the persons who were involved? Where did this experience take place, or where did you take the trip to? What happened? And how did you feel? You must also remember that as you look at what happened, when it happened, you might also express some of your feelings there. There is nothing to restrict that. Remember also, in the middle of your composition, that is where you will share the high point or the thrill experience that you had. You were going on a journey by boat, or it was your first trip by boat. Maybe the ride was scary. You were very afraid. Or maybe you were all excited and you wanted to help the captain drive the boat. All of that can be included in the middle of your composition. Then we have the conclusion. In the conclusion, you now share your general feelings about the event or the experience. You can also share your expectations of having this experience again or a better one if needed. The conclusion wraps up your whole composition. So what you try to do is not to introduce any new ideas. If you forgot something from your ideas that you would have brainstormed earlier, your conclusion is not the place to include it. Now that we have organized our ideas, keeping in mind the parts of the composition, the next step and the whole focus of composition is to write. Here, you look at the ideas listed as they were organized, and you do your first piece of writing, or as we say, you do a draft. Doing a draft gives you time to go back and make some changes or adjustment to improve your writing. Now remember, as far as possible, to use the same order to complete your writing task. It helps you to keep focus, and it helps you to ensure that you are keeping on target with all the ideas that you would have listed before. Now that we would have followed the 3 first steps, are you ready to write? Let's remember the words suggested, but do not restrict your usage. So here are some of the words that we would have come up with. Traveling, during, captain, life jacket, engine, or some people say motor, seat. Again, these are just a few suggested words. Let's now look at what our composition can look like and pay attention to the parts that are indicated. Traveling from place to place has always been exciting for me. Riding a bus or a car for hours, allows you to see many places as you travel. I can even remember the time I traveled by plane to visit my aunt in Letem, Region 9. My best traveling moment was when my family decided to visit my grandmother in Bartica. Last August was the first time my grandmother could not come to visit us for the August vacation, so Dad decided that we would visit her instead. I was so excited to go, since this would have been my very first trip by boat. As the days went by, I was so excited, I just couldn't wait. The day arrived and we were all packed. We each packed a bag with everything we would need for our trip. As we arrived at Pericastelling, I saw many small boats, all moored and waiting for passengers to depart. The boat captains were standing under a shed while a man asked my father if we were traveling. But I couldn't stop looking at the boats and the river. Some had sheds and some did not. The water seemed very rough, but my dad said not to be afraid. As we were about to board the boat, a young man collected all our bags and started to pack them in one of the boats with a shed. Dad went down into the boat first. He then stood and helped my mom as she entered. As my sister was walking down the stairs of the Stelling, she slipped, but luckily for her, the bowman was holding her hand. I was glad she was not hurt. Now we were all safely in the boat. A few more people came and joined us. Suddenly I heard a voice saying, "Please put on your life jacket. We are about to leave." Mom said that was the captain. As we left, the boat was going faster and faster as the waves hit on the boat. My heart was pounding, but I was too excited to be scared. Finally, the boat stopped. "We are here," Dad shouted. I never imagined traveling by boat was so much fun. I am happy that Dad decided to let us visit Grandma. That was an experience I will always remember, and I can't wait for my second boat ride. Now, once you would have completed writing, we are almost finished. But I hope you will remember that you take the time to read it over another time. Now for the final stage in our process of writing, and that is to review. Now very often, your teacher might have said to you, check over your work. That's what we mean when we say review. It's simply that we take the time to check over, to read over, or to go through our work once again. In the process of reviewing, you are reading over to ensure that your composition has a good flow. But more particularly, with time as a factor, it is important to check for the following. We check for punctuations. And your punctuations will include capital letters where they're needed, full stops, commas, and if needed, exclamations or even question marks. So punctuations are very, very important when you are writing your composition. We also take time to review and check on our spelling. You may be able to pick up on 1, 2, if not all of your own spelling errors. So be careful and watch out for them. You also look at the ideas that you would have stated in your brainstorming stage of writing. Remember, in your brainstorming stage, Those were the ideas that you had planned to include in your composition. So you look back to make sure that you would have done that in your actual writing. So pupils, there we have it. We have covered all the steps to help us get to the place where we write excellent compositions. You must know that writing a good composition can only be achieved by constant practice. So I challenge you to write more. Take the next 2 days, follow the steps that we would have discussed, and write a composition on your own. I will give you a scenario, read it, and write your very own composition after you would have gone through the very important first 2 steps of the writing process. Remember, brainstorming your ideas is very, very important. So before I give you that scenario, let's just review those steps. Step 1, pick a topic or scenario. Step 2, brainstorming. Step 3, organizing. Step 4, writing the composition. And step 5, review your work. So boys and girls, here is your scenario. Our adventure club leader decided to take us on a camping expedition. Write a composition on a camping experience you had. Highlight the most memorable part. I'll read that again for you. Our adventure club leader decided to take us on a camping expedition. Write a composition on a camping experience you had. Highlight the most memorable part. Take a few moments to write it down or to read it over. And remember, you take the next 2 days to complete that task. That's all, pupils. See you next time.